Hey everybody, Nick Espinoza, your chief security fanatic here, and today I'm asking the question, why can't the United States just get it together with 5G infrastructure? This is actually something that I think should be concerning to a lot of Americans, just how behind we are, even though we've made some progress recently. This is coming from The Verge, but there's a lot of publications that are talking about this specific issue, and this is what's going on. CEOs from major U.S. airlines, including American, Delta, and Southwest, warned that essentially the deployment of the new 5G spectrum this past yesterday, could cause quote-unquote catastrophic disruption for flights across the country. The warning, which was also signed by shipping companies including UPS Airlines and FedEx Express, was issued in a letter from CEOs seen by Reuters, which said that both commercial and cargo flights could be affected. Now, this letter was sent to Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg, essentially the Federal Communications Commission Chairwoman Jessica Rosenworcel, and also the FAA Administrator Steve Dickson, and White House National Economic Council Director Brian Deese, again, according to Reuters. Now, the 5G spectrum in question is known as the C-band, and both AT&T and Verizon deployments went live yesterday after suffering multiple previous delays. Now, at the core of this issue are fears that the new C-band airwaves could interfere with sensitive radar altimeters on certain aircraft. Altimeters obviously are critical for landings, especially when visibility is limited, and failures in that particular system were actually linked to a fatal crash in 2009 of an airplane owned by Turkish Airlines. And I quote the letter from basically these airlines. Quote, airplane manufacturers have informed us that there are huge swaths of the operating fleet that may need to be indefinitely grounded as a result of these 5G deployments. I continue. Immediate intervention is needed to avoid significant operational disruption to air passengers, shippers, supply chain, and delivery of needed medical supplies that could cause chaos and strand, quote, tens of thousands of Americans overseas. Now, essentially, and I'm sorry, I'm a little under the weather today, so forgive me here, but without more safeguards, the rollout of this 5G spectrum could, quote, result in significant restrictions on 787s, 777s, 737s, and regional aircraft in major cities, and cause hundreds of thousands of flight cancellations and disruptions for customers across the industry in 2022, and also the suspension of cargo flights into these locations. Obviously, that's deeply concerning because here we are, in a supply chain crisis, and if you're talking about grounding fleets of planes over this, that is deeply concerning. Now, the FAA issued a rule in early December that basically keeps flights from landing in poor visibility conditions if they're landing at an airport where there's deemed to be enough interference that the altimeters are not reliable. At the time, it wasn't clear which airports or planes would be affected by this rule, particularly as Verizon and AT&T have continuously been negotiating with the airline industry over these possible disruptions. United Airlines, for example, is calling for 5G to be implemented everywhere in the country on January 19th, yesterday, except within approximately 2 miles of airport runways at affected airports. This indicates that essentially the size of this buffer could be reduced after further analysis by the FAA. Now, on January 3rd, Verizon and AT&T previously agreed to take steps to mitigate the potential effect on aviation, including placing buffer zones around 50 airports for 6 months. They agreed to halt 5G rollouts at even more towers this week after the airline industry's warning, which means there have been a lot of disruptions or a lack of 5G implemented in other places. But here's the thing, though, and it's kind of the thrust of the entire issue. The C-band spectrum has already been rolled out in almost 40 different countries around the globe without causing altimeter failures, according to One Tech Trade Group. And United Airlines says that basically the right government policies could allow for safe deployment in the United States. So the question is, if these 40 countries, and they are using Boeing 747, 777, 737s, and all of that, are able to figure this out and use the C-Spectrum 5G everywhere without disrupting altimeters, what makes planes in the United States different than anywhere else? Boeing is a U.S. company. Boeing is selling these things worldwide, and I'm sure there are plenty of other makers like France's Airbus that are not having these issues as well. So what this appears to be is essentially a red tape issue. We need to study things to the nth degree to make sure they're safe. And I am not, for the record, advocating that, we shoot from the hip here and, well, we'll figure it out as we go along. But there have been multiple studies around the globe that essentially say this is safe for airplanes. And so why can't it be safe here? Why aren't we adopting and validating those reports and saying we can take this on? It's the same problem we have with the Food and Drug Administration. Oftentimes we see things in Europe that are approved that become safe and effective for combating various diseases, whether they're vaccines or some kind of treatment, but they get caught up in committee here, and they get caught up in the red tape that the United States has. That is one of the problems we have overall here in the United States, is that we can't pivot and build infrastructure without having to jump through a million different hoops. If you watch Bill Maher, for example, Real Time with Bill Maher on HBO, it took him over 1,000 days to just get a solar panel installed into his home in Southern California because of all the red tape, all the hoop jumping, everything. California tried to have basically a high-speed rail move essentially from one city to the other, which I think was like 100 miles worth of track as a test, and they couldn't actually get it done. It was costing something like $1 billion a mile to get this done because of all the red tape, all of the things that we have that are preventing these kinds of things from rolling out. Whereas China, if you look at that, because of that government, they can pivot on a dime, and they have been putting high-speed trains, thousands of miles of high-speed train tracks everywhere. Now, I'm not saying that we should turn into some authoritarian government so we can get stuff done, but what I'm saying is we cannot allow technological progress and technological infrastructure to be stymied by red tape. We can't allow things to get caught up into committee. There are over 300 million, closer now to 350 million people here in the United States. Technology continues to advance. Technology continues to progress. And as we have studies coming out from other places, I think we as Americans need to understand that those can be validated, providing we are validating the controls and method for that testing. Those can be applied here. What happens in another country in terms of their 5G spectrum, if it's exactly the same as ours, it's going to be the same. A Boeing is a Boeing. So there you go. Now, obviously, if you're in aviation, you're going to say, Nick, you're an idiot, and here's why. I would love to hear that. Again, I am not saying that we lower our safety standards, but what I am saying is we have to understand that data that is valid and relevant comes from other places, and we are not adopting that because we are doing our own tests when sometimes we can take the existing tests and run with it. And the other side of this is red tape. And we have red tape in this country. That's obviously an issue. So thank you for bearing with me. I've obviously been a little under the weather today, so thank you for that, for sticking with me. But I think it's an interesting discussion to have, and there we are. And please like, share, follow me here on Facebook and Twitter at NickAESP, and please feel free to subscribe to me at YouTube as well. And as always, stay safe, stay online, and please stay private. Thanks, everyone.